Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. We'll be getting started in just under a minute. All right. Thank everyone for joining Virtual Programmatic Day. This is our H2 Virtual Programmatic Day, streaming live. This event is organized by IAB Europe's Programmatic Working Group. If you would like more information on the work we are doing on some of the topics covered today, feel free to reach out and learn more about our 2026 work plan. You can find the contact details on the slide. And it is my pleasure to welcome the host for today's event, Senior Director for Programmatic and Sell-side Development, IAS, Nick Welch. Nick, thank you, and over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dimitri. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to IAB Europe's second virtual programmatic day of 2025. And yeah, we're broadcasting live from multiple locations. As Dimitri highlighted, my name's Nick Welch. I'm the Senior Director of Programmatic and Sell-side Development here. And together today, we're here to explore three important topics, digging into important considerations when executing programmatic. The first being sell-side decision making, which will prove to be an interesting kind of discussion. The second, the role of AI in programmatic buying. Keen to hear a lot about that one. We're hearing a lot about AI, but we've got boots on the ground now of experts talking about the practicality of executing AI and programmatic buying. And then finally, a topic very close to my heart, which is around trust and transparency. So for those of us joining for the first time, IAB Europe is the unified voice of digital advertising across the continent. And we bring together national federations, leaders, experts from across the ecosystem to collaborate, but also drive a responsible, transparent, impactful industry. So one of the ways we bring the industry together is by hosting events like today's Virtual Programmatic Day, connecting voices and expert opinion from across Europe. Having been the chair of the Programmatic Trading Committee in the past, I was delighted, obviously, to be asked, and I'm, very happy and thrilled to be back hosting the Virtual Programmatic Day again. It's really good to see so many people joining us online. I can see the numbers ticking up as we speak. So thank you all for making time out of your busy schedules to be with us. We promise an engaging, thought-provoking experience filled with hopefully some good discussion, good debate, and valuable insights. So let's dive in and get started. We move to the next slide. So today we've got an exceptional lineup of moderators and panelists across three powerful sessions. Together, we'll be unpacking the major forces reshaping programmatic in 2025. So from smarter sell-side decision making in panel one to the rapid acceleration of AI across the entire programmatic supply chain in two. And then we will discuss the industry's collective push for greater trust, transparency, and integrity across every channel. So get ready for an insight-packed, forward-looking day. Every speaker you'll hear from is a proud member of IAB Europe. So if you want to take part yourselves, then please join. We're incredibly fortunate to have some of the brightest minds and top thought leaders in our industry joining us to share their insights and collaborate on these initiatives. So if you or your organization is interested in getting involved in future events or learning about IAB Europe membership, simply scan the QR code that's on your screens now to find out more about joining the IAB Europe committee. So before we kick off, just a bit of housekeeping. Today's event is live, but it's also being recorded. So we'll be sharing the recording with all the registrants afterwards, and you'll find it available on our websites, the IAB's websites, Watch on Demand section, and in the IAB Europe newsletter. So since we're running this as a live event, we really encourage the audience participation. So please do use the Q&A box and drop your questions in, and you'll find that at the bottom of your screen. Okay, so now if we go to the next slide, now to dive into our first panel of the day, Smarter Pipes, the impact of sell-side decisioning. This session explores how SSPs, ad servers, and publishers are optimizing yield, managing demand paths, and balancing commercial and quality signals in real time. So this panel will touch upon the implications for buyers, transparency and decision logic, and what a balanced marketplace looks like when the sell side gets smarter. So I'd like to invite Etze, who's going to be moderating this session. And a quick reminder, again, to submit any questions in the Q&A box throughout the session. So Etze, over to you to well, you will enjoy, but introduce your panelists.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think, yeah, it's quite a very interesting topic that we're diving in. And joining me would be people from the different sides of the ecosystem, both buy sides and sell side. The first would be Cristian, who is the vice president of sales and for EMEA at PubMatic. Elli, who's joining from Onetag, and Gabrielle joining from Comcast advertising. And together we would be unpacking basically the um, what sell-side decisioning is and how this basically impacts both publishers but also media buyers as well on a larger scale. Um, if the the participants are here, did could basically just say something. I'm not sure.
Hi everyone, can you see me?
Yep, great. Great. So let's get right into it. Starting first with you, Gabrielle. In simple words, how does sell-side decisioning work, and what is the value that it brings for both media sellers and buyers?
Yes, so hi everyone. First of all, I'd like to present myself briefly. So I'm Gabrielle Toux and I work at Comcast Advertising. I lead product marketing outside of the US. And I'm here to represent Freewheel today, who has ad tech solution for the buy side and for the sell side. Very glad to be with you today. And yeah, to your question about sell-side decisioning, I think, first of all, I think it's a term that needs to be defined because I come from an ad management platform, which means an ad server and a native SSP. And when you talk about, sell-side decisioning, it means actually a lot, right? We take it seriously because it's at the heart of what we do. And we work with very premium video publishers, and this publisher, they need to deal with the complexity, right? They have a lot of regulation. They need to manage the user experience on big screen. They have live content, and they need to manage ad podding. So they need to be smart, and they need to be in control of the decisioning, and they are very active already on that front. So my definition of sell-side decisioning in that context will be simply a strategic approach, in which the publisher will use increasingly intelligence, or whether it's rules or whether it's data. It could be, in the ad server or at the SSP level, but really to optimize the way that their inventory is presented and evaluated, offered to the buy side, to enable smarter bidding and make sure that DSP make informed decision. So while this concept is not new, it's true that we are seeing growing trends, in terms of adoption. And I like to talk about some example on how today our publisher are using sell-side decisioning. So actually, I'd like to remind that there are like a different layer of decisioning, in the ad selection process. And there's a first decision that is, when the publisher will put his requirement in the ad server and will say, okay, I don't want two same industry appears back to back or in the same pod. I want flexibility to have dynamic floor price, for example, or I want to optimize either my inventory I want to push or prioritize certain types of supply or demand. And then there is the second decision that we are talking about also today. It's the decision at the bid request level. And for me, it's what we call at FreeWheel signal enrichment. And it's how we can share more than basic information. So in the video industry, it could be genre, channel, title, and etc. to make sure that the DSP, they make informed decision. And finally, there is a last decision that is super important because it's not because an advertiser will win the auction at the SSP level. That means he will appear on screen. And there is a lot of intelligence here. It's not based only on pricing, on targeting, on pacing, and it's actually super important for the buyer as well. We understand, the benefit for the publisher. It's obvious. It's how they can, have more flexibility and agility in how they manage their yield and revenue. But actually, it's super important for the buy side as well because it will allow them to, target and prioritize the relevant inventory. So no money wasted. We know with all this information, they can bid more confidently and more competitively because if they know this ad opportunity is really relevant to them, they are willing to pay more, for example, and they can spend more efficiently to improve the win rate. And it's coming back to what I was saying. So the fact that they have more chance to appear on the screen. So for me, this sell-side decisioning is really balancing the ecosystem, and it's very beneficial for both sides.
That's quite interesting, actually. Good points that you listed out there. Cristian, do you want to say something from the
Yes, sure. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. Just a quick intro. My name is Cristian Coccia. I usually based in Milan. I do run the Southern Europe and Middle East at PubMatic, and I do cover some practice around enterprise sales and our buy-side platform at Europe. So yes, how the sell-side decisioning is providing, the value to both sides of the chain. Really simplifying, we are seeing a fundamental redistribution of the decisioning power. So optimization, targeting, inventory, merchandising are now being more and more executed much closer to where the impressions are generated. So the sell side. And sell-side decisioning applies data, algos, insight directly into the publisher stack at SSP level as well as at server level. Why doing this? To ensure a better control, cleaner data, improving accuracy and integrity, and last but not least, help the buy side to regain control of the media supply chain, the programmatic media supply chain. This basically, we see from another standpoint, represent, I wouldn't say the end, but for sure the sunset of cookie-based diet. So, I'm a beholder. Maybe there are a few young folks attending this webinar, but we've been, consuming cookies for targeting match over the past 20 plus years in this industry. And programmatic has been at the age of a massive adoption of cookies, core of the targeting. Now, this is going to be on hand for many different stories and things happening. And we are now seeing a more over-reliance among the supply chain of third parties, IDs, sellers-defined audiences, and the industry is receiving, I would say, this nutrition with a healthier first-party data. And that's it.
Right, great. And I think Elli has one or two things to say about this before we dive deeper into this topic. Yeah, Elli.
I do. Thank you, Ezzy. So hi everyone, my name is Elli Papadaki, and I run the supply team globally at Onetag. So just to add, I guess, to the points that Gabrielle and Cristian made, and specifically, let's just say as a complement to Gabrielle's point, coming from or looking at what sell-side decisioning means specifically, one point I'd like to make is it depends on or it can slightly change depending on the context, depending on the kind of supply. So if it's CTV, if it's web, the principle of it, which is to improve the efficiencies, remains the same, but each ecosystem works a little bit differently. And one thing that is important, whether you're on the publisher side or you're on the buy side, is that you ask your partners exactly what sell-side decisioning or curation, which is how we speak about this from a Onetag perspective, means. And from our point of view, as a business that was built for the buyer, so quite unconventionally, not necessarily built as its inset to serve the publisher ecosystem. The publishers benefit from curation, but let's say from a slightly roundabout way. So what curation means for us is to be able to make decisions in real time about the quality of the inventory and whether it's going to fulfill a purpose for the buyer. So this will look differently depending on who the buyer is, who the brand is, what the campaign objective is going to be, and therefore not every impression is going to be right for all of those different objectives. So from our perspective, what curation does is to be able to find at placement level that placement that will fulfill the KPI for the specific buyer and the specific campaign they've set up. So it eliminates wastage. The buyers don't need to waste, so to burn in order to learn. And because this happens in real time, it just provides greater efficiencies over the course of the time. And from a publisher's perspective, the idea here is that we better monetize inventory that might otherwise not be seen, because there's obviously a limit to how much inventory the DSPs can listen to and process at any one time. So it's the data signals that each partner can bring to the table, is how they can work with both other third-party data partners to overlay additional data when they make that decisioning on the inventory side. So as Cristian was saying, is make decisions closer to where the inventory originates to make sure that you surface the right thing.
Yeah, very good points that you mentioned. And I think one of the main concerns as well is how we're with the changes going on in the industry, how we are relating more with first party and contextual signals, as you mentioned as well with curation early. But if you can quickly just point out as there's more reliance on first party and contextual signals within the ad server, will the future of programmatic be driven mainly by ad server-centric stacks, or would we see a situation where there's like a multi-SSP ecosystem currently? How do you see this coming up?
So I've spent many years publisher side. So again, I would like to start by caveating that not all supply is the same. So it depends. Are we talking about, tier one premium publisher, let's say news organizations, magazine groups and so on and so forth, or are we talking about gaming environments? For me, anything to do with the ad server and the first party, or let's say the publisher's proprietary data, that tends to be for, let's say, reserved for direct campaigns. The priority there is different. The type of brands perhaps that they sell to and they prioritize tend to be different to what happens in the exchange or in the open auction. So if you are a premium publisher, then curation can bring incremental value because it's inventory that you're not monetizing directly yourself in some capacity, but then the data signals that the SSP comes with in partnership with third-party data providers means that you're monetizing impressions that you otherwise wouldn't. In my experience, the first-party data, again, if it's reserved, it tends to be reserved for the premium supply for their direct campaigns. It's something that is sold in a very different capacity. I guess what's interesting is for the supply that sits, let's say, more mid-tier, so they don't necessarily have direct sales team, they don't manage that relationship with the buyers, is how you can overlay that data or, work with an exchange or your SSP partners to create spaces where that data is transacted and it gives those impressions an additional value. From From a buy side, I think there's always going to be a need for a multiple entry points into the ecosystem. So something that creates competition, which you don't necessarily have when you transact directly with a publisher. So I view it from a who's the brand, what's the objective of the campaign? Do you know you want to be in a specific environment, therefore you'll go to specific partners versus, utilizing the open auction and curation platforms across different exchanges in order to get more scale and pick into inventory, regardless of the environment.
Yeah, it's a very good point. But from the supplier point of view, Gabrielle, can you give a few points as well?
Yes, I think you will guess that I might have a slight different opinion than Elli on that, and like the data is not reserved for direct. But I think the easiest way to put that, I would like to take an analogy, right? So if you want to go on holidays, do you prefer to travel and to go direct with one flight, or do you want to take like multiple stops and you can have the risk of losing your luggage and have some delays? So personally, I prefer to travel direct, and I think it's the publisher see that as an advantage because the ad server is very a powerful engine and actually can see a lot of data across first-party data, but also third-party. That the vendor that work with the publisher, contextual data, behavioral data, and also it sees data across both, right, the ad servers and multiple SSPs. So I think, ad server, generally speaking, today have this capacity to centralize all that type of data and give the seller the possibility to activate quickly, safely in one platform and also in programmatic. So again, I'd like to give, some example on how our publishers are using data today. So when it comes to audience, for example, our publisher can create audience segments that mix different data, first, third, or contextual, in actually only a few hours, which is quite a big deal. And they can activate that programmatically. And that means, it's quick and safe for the publisher, but also guaranteed to the buyer to have a very qualitative and granular approach on data, on their deals for ultimately better outcome. Another example is that, in our platform, the vast majority of our publisher, whether they are ad server or just SSP customers, they are standardized in the same nomenclature with the same attributes. So whether it's, programmer, channel, gender, and so on. And this actually unlock a lot of possibilities for the buyers because now the buyer can curate from different suppliers without any intermediaries and using all, the same common language. So let's say, an agency would like to create a sport package using broadcaster A, B, C in 3 different countries directly without anyone, they could do that. So for me, it's a big changer to go direct because, we talk about decentralization a lot, they will be able to pay less taxes. It's also in terms of technical operation, there's less ops and more work in media. And to finish, we talk about, on the SSP, how they can enrich the bid. We did a case study at Freewheel with one publisher. And when this publisher were using, all these enrichment tools, they saw an increase of 50% in bid response rates, which typically correlate with higher revenue. And when they were adding extra signal, so for example, gender, channel, etc., they saw also an increase in the bid price. So for me, it means that, it's a virtuous approach because the buyer are willing to pay more to have differentiated supply, to have differentiated and reliable data as well. So it's again like an opportunity for both sides.
Maybe Ezzy, because I found the conversation quite intriguing, so maybe I just wanted to take a minute here.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think we're missing the point here. We should, all of us working to empower the open web and mitigate the threat of consumer engage mostly into social media platform. And I would say to answer and to find a position in between that the answer is both. Both a server and sell-side platform can definitely provide and match with the needs that are unlocked from your answer. Then there will be some use cases where probably straight path to the server can work more smoothly, or ways where a curated inventory project can deliver better scale, large scale, and better efficiency. So I would say that it's all about how also the ad server integrate with the sell-side platform. There are some ad server more open and transparent, and some a bit less. I would say that Gabrielle represent a technology here which is quite open, and we are happy to partner with them. So I would restable, the context here that I think is both opportunity are a good way to help the buy side to regain control of the supply chain, and we should all work together, sit together to help them to not, put even more money on social media platform where basically you have a really lack of control. I wouldn't say lack of quality, but for sure not the quality large brands deserve when they're engaging with the consumer. That said, I do represent a company has been at the head of the evolution of media supply curation, and I do still see that with a media supply curation, you can help agencies to get the both of two words, large scale and controlled environment that come from programmatic direct. So PMPs and above up straight to programmatic direct and PGs. But just at a position in the middle, I would say, in a pure Italian style, I would say.
Yeah, good points actually. And I think it's in the meantime, if there are if any of the attendees have any questions, please drop your thoughts, your questions in the chats. Would be nice to get to them after at the end of the session. But speaking about some of the benefits, right, of sell-side decisioning and how it could impact, I think one of the major benefits of what buyers are really looking at as well is the level of transparency and visibility, right? And maybe Cristian, you can quickly touch on what level of visibility over sell-side decisioning strengthens relationship with buyers without exposing competitive strategies as well, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. So and everybody, transparency should mean clarity of purpose, not just full exposure of each algos and secret sauce. That's not the purpose. Buyer they don't need to see every piece of the logic behind the programmatic, but they should for sure understand why an impression was chosen and why that impression was prioritized, because that will be instrumental to engage in a more productive way the consumer. So the focus should be shared on such as efficiency, viewability and attention matrix, sustainability, and broadly the way you can build a path to supply and not just focus on the price. The path, how you go to buy something is equally important than the object you're buying. This is what the promise about visibility and transparency. And we at PubMatic supports open framework and consistent data sharing standard to train trust while protecting, commercial advantage for each part of the programmatic chain.
yeah. There's a good point. Before I comment, Gabrielle and Elli, do you agree with Cristian, or you have a different opinion?
No, I think for me, like, we give already like a lot of tools, as Cristian say, like SSP or ad server level for the publisher to use and to share with the buyers. For me, that's maybe three things that are very important for the buy side. The first one is very understanding the inventory, make sure that the buy side understand the inventory, and make sure, there is like there is a consistent categorization, so maybe they can compare between publisher as well. Anything regarding the context and the content where the ad will appear, for me, it's also very, very important. And the last one is around supply price clarity. So who is involved in that auction? For me, it's very important. And understanding where the budget goes. After anything related to the auction mechanics and I was mentioning, for example, that the publisher, if they want to optimize or push one supply over another, because they don't want, let's say, the bad side to do cherry picking and stuff like that. I think for me that should be the kind of secret sauce in a way. So not necessarily needs to be shared on that.
And if I can add to Gabrielle's, actually, I fully agree with both Cristian and Gabrielle's comments. And it also blends a little bit into how we can better communicate the value of what each platform can do. It's making sure that our partners, whether it's the agencies, the buyers, or the publishers, understand what is different, how those decisions are made, what data signals are applied. Use demos, use case studies, talk through past examples, is trying and bring them in. And I agree on the point about the secret sauce, as it were. Everyone has, everyone's technology operates in a slightly different way. It's just making sure that we are able to verbalize this and communicate this clearly. And that at the end of the day, if a client is doing a test, that we sit down and we say, what is it you're trying to achieve? Yes, how can you select the supply, or do you have visibility and transparency on what that supply is, how directly you're buying it, what data signals are involved in making that selection? So we often do tend to forget that it's a very complex, sort of a lot of jargon ecosystem, and we don't take the time to properly explain and verbalize the unique, let's say, selling point about each partner. So that's how I would go about it.
Yep. I think I totally agree with everyone. Those are very important points mentioned. To be honest, I'm more sometimes very biased towards the buy side, and was really curious about some of the benefits and points, especially on visibility. But one question on our minds as well is, how can the sell side better quantify and communicate the incremental value that smarter decisioning brings to buyers' outcomes, right? So and I think it goes up to like the broader conversation around buyers moving more towards like outcomes, KPIs in code. But maybe Cristian, you can quickly chime in and shed light on this.
Yeah, sure. So, you mean smarter sell-side decisioning basically delivers measurable improvement in win rates, auction efficiency, and engagement metrics. At PubMatic, for what we see from our standpoint, we do apply intelligence models, for instance, to reduce duplicate requests, to enhance bind relevance, things that are quite peculiar for a sell-side platform, by the way, and which directly increase the buyer return on the investment, so AKA ROAS. And by demonstrating value means that speaking with the buyers the same language and providing a cleaner path to supply, that can help them to engage consumer. I always talk to this point. It's not about technologies to enable the agency to regain the control of the media supply, programmatic media supply chain, to engage consumer in a more productive way from them, and from the publisher, provide the best match for where their users are sitting and when they're ready to engage with the brand itself.
Yeah, thanks, Cristian. Do you want to add something, Elli, also?
No, all good on that front.
Great. I think we can then, before we round up the session, we can look into the questions. And I think we have one question here for Cristian. So basically, PubMatic positions itself as a neutral SSP. How do you think that the logic is towards like how smart decisioning is being done on an SSP level? Can you quickly just shed light on that?
Yeah, sure. It's all about the path. We help a media agency or a brands to own a destiny when they're going to buy an impression. They can be like, this object. You can say, I can buy this option through the Apple Store or through a reseller or straight away through Amazon. The impression is the same as an iPod, stuff. We help them to select the path they want to get them. We help them to merchandise the inventory they want, to get access to the inventory they want by applying targeting criteria close to the sell side. And we can deliver the promise that the more we're close to the supply in an environment where cookies are less relevant or cookies simply do not exist, that is the best way to get in touch with your consumer. So it's all about regaining control, being more conscious of what you buy and how do you get access to what you want to buy.
Thanks, Cristian. I think our time is up, but it's been very interesting conversation, and I think the conversation will keep going in 2026. We'll probably see more conversations around sell-side decisioning. And thanks to everyone that participated. And then we can continue with the rest of the event.
Thank you, Ezzy, and big thank you to our panelists there. Really interesting to hear how the sell side are thinking about giving data to the buy side, the data being closer to source around that decisioning. And interested, it's a nice segue into our next topic, because we're going to be discussing AI and its impact in buying. And I'm sure there'll be some crossover discussion with the last panel. So we're shifting the topic that's transforming every corner of the ecosystem. It is artificial intelligence, ranging from creative optimization to dynamic pricing, predictive outcomes, machine learning, redefining how media is bought, sold, and measured. Obviously, data plays a fundamental role in that. We've just been hearing it, why the sell side feel, that's incredibly important that they can offer that decisioning. So I'd be interested to hear about the interplay between AI and that. This session will cover practical applications of AI across the programmatic supply chain, as well as challenges such as explainability and bias. So this second panel, machine buying, AI and programmatic, I'd like to welcome Chloe Nicholls, who is the head of the ad tech at IAB UK, and who's going to be moderating this session. So again, we're not taking questions live in video, but if you have questions, please add them into the Q&A box as the discussions unfold, and Chloe will try and get to them. So Chloe, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you all for joining us today. As obviously Nick just mentioned, we're going to be going through the second panel, which is machines buying media. And I'm going to be joined by Alice Beecroft, Belle, and Clara. If you guys want to quickly just introduce yourselves and your companies that you're representing. Maybe I'll hand over.
Seeing as I'm first on the slide. Hi, my name is Alice Beecroft. I'm the Senior Director of Global Strategy and Partnerships over at Yahoo. I focus on the development and the forward motion of the Yahoo DSP for all of our non-US markets, looking from everything across sort of vendor partnerships to how we become more interoperable with planning tools that our clients are using, all the way through to sort of evangelizing what future trends are going to be looking like.
And I'll go next then, seeing as I'm next on the slide. Hi, everybody. My name's Bal. I'm Group Director for Client Partnerships across EMEA at DoubleVerify. So me and my team, we manage our relationships directly with our largest spenders here in Europe.
Hi everyone, super excited for today. My name is Clara de Rosa. I'm Head of Customer Success at Adform. For those that might not be familiar with Adform, we are a buy-side platform and we are one of the few independent ad tech vendors in this space, especially European-born. So really excited for our conversation today. Looking forward to it.
Great, thank you all. I do, the slight irony I find in the title of our panel is obviously that machines have been buying media for a long time. I doubt any of us are using fax machines still. It was to the complete dismay of the rest of my family that this is a new concept. But I think there's that innovation, the growth of agents, sorry. But I think just to outline this, what parts of your business and products have kind of changed the most in relation to AI over the past year, and what do you kind of think has driven some of this evolution?
I'm happy to go first. As visually is a bit difficult, I concur with you so much, Chloe. I think we are living and breathing AI. I mean, DSPs would not exist if we didn't have machine learning. So over the last 20 years, we are literally dealing with millions of queries per second as DSPs. And to do that, you need machine learning. So for sure, for us, it's something that we've lived and breathed. So there's a little bit of skepticism maybe on the title of the panel, but I'm sure it will lead us to a lot of important takeaways for the audiences. I think in terms of then the evolution of what we see as DSPs, and I can talk to the Adform stance, what we're seeing is just AI being embedded more and more in the decisioning layer and into automation. And that is incredibly exciting. I think things like more omni-channel DSPs developing mean that we have to also enable a really seamless experience for end users and for buyers across many more channels. So again, we have to evolve in that space. Maybe a practical example from Adform that I can share with the audience is when it comes to launching, we've just launched our agentic audience discovery agent. So what that means is that if you're a planner or a trader, you log on to the Adform DSP and say you want to search and curate an audience inputting natural language. So I would go in and put, I want to reach a 25 to 34-year-old urban professional who's into cars. Bit niche. That's definitely not me. And then what happens with the agent is that you will have, in a similar way that we do with our agents that we use, like ChatGPT, an instant response. And then you have the human intervention, which would still, as a trader, you still can have a decision in terms of whether you want to use those audiences or not. But what it does bring is far more quicker outputs that you can then tailor or review and then action on. So again, day to day, that brings a lot. It's a really small example of how traders' life is becoming a little bit easier. And then maybe the only other angle as a business, I'm head of customer success, so maybe have a little bit slight skew to this. I'm really excited about all the opportunities AI brings in this space for us to really have greater collaboration with our clients, a real 360 view of their pain points, but also where the opportunities are in order to reduce churn. And we work with the likes of Gainsight as a customer success tool to enable to do that. So exciting space for customer success for sure. Yeah,
Cool. I mean, from Yahoo's side, I mean, again, I completely concur. Like the name of the panel, etc. It's not a case whereby this isn't something that most companies have been investing in. I mean, Yahoo has been around for an incredibly long time. I think we actually celebrated our 30th birthday this year, and we have a long history of investing in machine learning and then afterwards in AI. I think we've got something like 570 different patents that are actually out there. But the two areas that we have been going sort of quite hard on in 2025 is around sort of enhancing that performance even more, making it more intuitive. And it's the advancements in AI that's allowed us to basically start ingesting 10x more data, allowing our models to work even more, more intuitively and more strongly, allowing it to process the data faster and basically deliver even better performance than what it was seeing before. Now, I think one of the things to say, it's important to note that with all these advancements, it's still giving that choice and control to the user as to whether or not they want to switch it on, whether or not it's something that they want to partake in. But I mean, other types of areas, and again, sort of Clara sort of bouncing on top of what you've just said already, is around that time saving efficiencies, actually starting to use natural language to allow the user of the platforms to actually find what it is they need. Now, that can be anything from translating insights through to discovering audiences, but also sort of shifting on from having those sort of intuitive dashboards providing recommendations and almost like prompting the users, like, did you mean, for example, to have a different frequency cap on one campaign line versus all of the others? So really starting to pull through those recommendations and using that within a sort of a Gen AI user prompt perspective. The other areas that we're focusing on is streamlining the execution, just making it quicker and easier. Also, as I mentioned about recommendations, but also around Q&A, making certain that human errors are picked up before they actually have any form of impact. And then again, from a measurement perspective, I mean, I don't think anyone's solved the full omni-channel measurement capabilities, but really helping users of the platform to actually understand the impact of the decisions they've made. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident that a lot of companies are looking around the same things: insight, trafficking, optimization, improvements, measurement, etc. So yes, it's going to be an interesting 2026 to come.
Definitely. Anything to add on that one, Pal?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Alice, you're right. We are looking at it all in the same way because it's pretty similar areas. But similar to both Alice and Clara, we've been using machine learning for years, since day dot, right? You can't have we're checking content, see if it's brand suitable. You can't have a human being doing that on every page in a millisecond, right? So I think where it's really changed our business is the sort of generative and the agentic AI area, and probably what I'm going to focus on today. So similar to what Alice said, it's just turbocharging everything we're doing, right? We still have human beings actually building out the policy, but using them to build our agents to help classify content. I think we're doing 60 years worth of video content is what we're classifying every day at the moment. Wow. Like that just wasn't possible till recently. Yes. Then also insights to clients, like the guys have said, it's using it at sort of bringing up insights in an easy to understand way. We measure data across every channel, every platform of their digital activity. It's so hard to actually surface those insights. So using agents around that. And then, finally, actually activating that data. Often when data's in different silos, it's really hard to actually leverage that or even know which levers to pull. So again, using agents to help sort of build that decision processing is really useful. So in answer to the question, sure, same as everyone else, it's helping us everywhere.
Yeah, brilliant. I would also love to know if anybody has solved the measurement problems omni-channel as well. But I think you've obviously just touched upon this as well, but I'd like to know a bit more about kind of how likely it is, in your opinions, that through the use of generative models, creative will become another part of the campaign that's kind of algorithmically optimized, and is that necessarily a good goal, or is that maybe possibly a bit short-sighted in terms of the efficiencies that it could drive?
I can probably jump in. I'm just going to give you an anecdote here because we don't actually do DCO, but I was with a global beauty brand the other day and they were talking about using generative AI on their creatives. And they were telling me, if you're wearing glasses, I mean, I've got a turban, so you can't see my hair, but most people, if you're wearing glasses, it was actually putting bald patches above where the line was here. Now, they were selling hair products. So that is obviously not great for their brand, right? And, creatives are your brand. Like that's what's pushing across your brand message and equity. In my personal opinion, especially where the tech is now, do you want to trust that to a generative AI model? I don't know. I'd still want to have human oversight because it is essentially your brand. But yeah, that was just when they told me that, I was like, okay, I would say it's a little way off where people want it to be right now.
Yeah. I mean, I can give my sort of two sort of pennies worth on this. At Yahoo, we do have a creative team. We have been sort of building out creative for quite a long time. I'm very much on the fence about it because in like the DCO perspective, I can definitely see the benefits, but I see the benefits more where AI is actually making the decisioning in the background as to what creative to show, what creative message to show, how to actually better sort of align it with potentially what content someone's consuming or what interests they potentially have. I can certainly see the benefits of using AI there. However, I see AI very much as the paintbrush and the human remaining as the artist. it's never going. I personally do not think we should ever be looking at AI created creatives without any form of human input, for everything that Bao just said. Equally, I think again, sort of like agreeing with what Bao said, the creative is so important to the brand. It's what people see. It's what people, sort of engage with. It creates that sentiment. It creates that emotional connection. And if you get that wrong, that can have the complete opposite effect of what it is that you're trying to do. So AI can definitely be seen as a tool to help sort of expand the creativity. It has the ability potentially for brands who don't have a lot of creative assets to be able to expand out the types of creatives that they're able to build out. But it really does have to remain with the human being in control and using it as a tool versus as a replacement for the designers.
I think just to add maybe a little bit more positive, I personally, like from a creative perspective, find it super exciting. So I'll give you just a couple of examples that stuck with me when it comes to creation of an ad campaign. Let's take the Coca-Cola campaign last year where they did, it was called Create Real Magic. And what they did is that they gave their brand assets and gave those to creators who could use Gen AI to co-create ad campaigns. So I think that's such a powerful example of how humans are now supercharged with AI to actually create creative, apologies, that's not the best sentence, that actually engages audiences. So I think from that perspective, completely agree with both Alice and Bal, like it's really critical there's human oversight, but the opportunities are endless. Especially with brands that maybe are a little bit static when it comes to creative, right? It's a new way of engaging with audiences that, frankly, is quite hard to sometimes engage with. So from that perspective, I'm quite excited and agree that we still need some control. I want to reiterate 20 years of DCO adoption that we see across 20,000 plus advertisers in our platform is still low. I think I was in a panel 2 years ago talking about this, who uses DCO, and it was in a room, one hand went up. So I think we've had the opportunity to test variations of creative for a really long time. But I believe that CMOs possibly, or kind of marketeers, are a little bit reluctant to experiment. So maybe my message to anyone here who is in control of such decisions is experiment more, because the technology is there to allow you to fail fast and act quickly. And that's what DCO really is, right? And then the iteration, instead of focusing on supercharging DCO, why don't we focus on the right setup for campaigns, right test environment, right test framework, and then actually leverage it. I think this is where potentially we're going wrong. We're just not adopting the technology that is already there. And now we're even talking about supercharging this technology. Yeah, that would be my advice to everyone who's here and that can make those decisions.
I mean, just to add to that, sorry, before we move on to the next question. I mean, I know I said I was on the fence. However, what I would say is that we're actively engaged with AI tools when it comes to creativity. There are so many good tools out there. Even when it just comes to using Gen AI to find the right image to pull in to a creative, rather than having to sort of like sift through thousands and thousands of different images, being able to actually have that sort of brought to your attention straight away is a superb use of using AI within creativity. But I think potentially what we're kind of all in agreement with is that it shouldn't be a case whereby anyone can just say, hey, create an image like this, and poof, it goes out into the programmatic ecosystem. Will we get there? I hope not. I really do. I really hope not, because I do still believe the human remains the artist.
Totally. Also, I just wanted a quick reminder, if you do have any questions for our panelists, please just pop them in the Q&A and we'll get them to them, at the end. But I guess kind of sticking with that theme of, responsibility, and maybe to start with you, Clara, as you've quite a positive take on some of this. What levels of explainability do buyers actually need from AI systems inside, the whole supply chain, and how can ad tech better surface this without kind of what's the word? Accidentally explaining something or sharing sensitive algorithmic advantages.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. I think Cristian in the panel before was talking about the clarity of purpose, right? So I think what's really important is to have that transparency. Again, if I was to be a little bit biased working for an independent ad tech vendor that is auditable and transparent across the end-to-end buying mechanism, is that clients are just not asking the right questions. Again, you might be focused on the micro and not the macro. I don't think you need to go down to the level of sharing your secret source. But for example, we work with a lot of clients to identify what information do they need to feel confident in the decision logic, right? I think this should be completely legitimate for clients to ask of their partners. I don't see this asked enough. I also see a very high adoption of black boxes in this ecosystem, and that puts a bad rep on even just programmatic as a way of buying media. So I feel optimistic that there are some positive ways around this. But again, if I was to urge anyone here working with your partners across the ecosystem, go back to Cristian's point on the clarity of purpose, like what do I need transparency on? Reality is that probably you don't need the detail of the micro, but more generically, you need a bit more reassurance on how are things being done and can I audit them and what information can I extrapolate that will make me feel certain that my pennies are being used in the right way. So yeah, maybe a little bit controversial.
I do think there are two different levels to look at though as well. There is the transparency when it comes to how the dollar the pound or the euro is actually being distributed throughout the supply chain. I completely agree with you, Clara. There, the question's not been asked enough. That should be completely transparent. We started that a long time ago on the buy side, and I feel the supply side needs to catch up a little bit there when it comes to that sort of transparency. We definitely shouldn't expect any form of black box sort of activity within that realms. However, when it comes to what I would probably call supply path optimization, I have a slightly differing opinion there. We quite frequently get asked the question, well, why did the algorithm decide that it was going to take that supply path versus the others? And I don't think the answer is binary. I mean, the whole point of machine learning and AI is that it's complicated and that there is loads of different inputs that actually go in to actually making that decision. However, we can be transparent about the types of decisions that are taking place, even if we're not willing to actually be transparent about the model level transparency. And arguably, nobody should expect a company, to Clara's point, to give away their secret source. At the end of the day, sort of that model and those models and the decisionings that are taking place are the secret source, and it's the reason why sort of performance or decisioning is taking place. But also at the end of the day, clients need to trust you. They have to trust what you're doing is in their best interest. They have to trust that the platform is making the right decisions for them, for their brand, for their performance goals. So yes, I think as we sort of move further into 2026, there is going to be that higher expectation of a deeper level of transparency, but I just don't think it should be expected at the model level.
I loved your point about trust there, Alice. That is really key. And yeah, to build on that, like I love the way everyone keeps talking about secret sauce as well. Everyone's got their little secret sauce, haven't they? But yeah, in terms of trust, you can make enough transparent to build trust with your partner or your client, right? Without giving away, quote unquote, the secret sauce. But if you're a full black box, if you don't know how your actual algorithm is working in terms of how do you know you're not just going to blow all your budget in the first hour, right? Okay, you might hit your outcomes, but you still need to show some level of transparency, right? And just showing the inputs you're using, I think is important. The dimensions, the metrics. We had an agency group, so we're using their DSPC, and so we knew they could see the log level data, right? We knew what dimensions we were optimizing towards, and we knew they have a competitor product, which is probably going to look at what we were doing because we know our performance is high. Now they saw the dimensions we were changing. We had transparency on that. They could see where we're delivering. They could see we're not doing anything shady, but we still didn't give away the secret source of why our models are being generated in that way, right? So for me, you should never be a full black box. You should still give enough that you're not giving away your secret sauce, and enough to build that trust. And that's the key bit. If you have the trust of the client with giving enough transparency and a fair amount of transparency, I think that's the key part. And Clara, to your point, you're right. Those full black boxes which aren't showing anything, they're the ones who are eroding the trust, and unfortunately makes it a lot difficult for partners like us guys. It seems to are transparent in the ecosystem.
Definitely. And we did obviously touch upon kind of autonomy in relation to creative, but maybe I'll start with you, Bal. But to what extent do you think machine learning could autonomously manage something like a bid strategy? And when do you think it needs that human intervention to, which actually outweighs kind of some of those risks?
Yeah, so again, story from a client. Obviously, I'm client partnership, so I chat to my clients a lot. But this really reminded me of a question from a major global CPG brand, right? And they were like, "Hey, partner A is doing this, partner B is doing that. Partner A is just doing cost compression, right? And that's great, but is that actually driving your actual business outcome, right? Okay, you're buying super cheap reach, but if no one's paying attention to your ads, what's the point in that reach, right? They wonder why they're losing market share when the in-platform tools are saying, hey, you're hitting more people than ever. This is great. AI is optimizing when we're hitting your goals. But, how do you know where you're running if people aren't watching it, or worse, like if it's running in a non-brand safe area, right? There was another article recently, I think it's in the New York Times, about monetizing content around Hitler, right? It's not where you want to be appearing, and that's what's going to be hurting your brand. Or even not necessarily that bad, but we see on YouTube, for example, a lot of kids content, right? Again, if you're chasing low CPCVs or CPMs, is that actually driving an outcome, or is that someone who's passed their phone to their kid, right? So that's where I think the human intervention needs to come in to go like, am I actually optimizing to the right point? Is the AI in this platform actually achieving my business objectives and not just chasing a media KPI, for example?
I mean, I just like to add one sentence to it because, again, I love the fact we're all in agreement here, by the way. But machines should definitely be doing the optimization, but the humans need to contextualize it. They need to actually tell the machines what it is that's important. They're the ones that have the understanding as to what it is that the brand is truly trying to achieve, not just bringing it back down to a key performance indicator and it's like a binary, a figure. It's always more complicated than that. It's very, very rare that brands are only trying to achieve one goal. For the most part, there are sort of multiple different goals that they're looking to achieve. And it's probably even more important when it comes to the upper funnel as well. For me, upper funnel, for the most part, which is where you're trying to sort of drive that long-term brand building. And in most cases, it's about sentiment. And I argue that at this point in time, I don't think AI has the capacity to be able to optimize towards that sentiment outside of some, sort of a brand awareness goals that might be coming through into the platform. And that's where the human comes in to sort of help contextualize. So very similar to what I said about creative, it should be a mixture of human plus AI. Equally, the human can't optimize to the level that AI can, but I don't think it should be a case that that it should be sort of take over everything.
Yeah, totally. And I guess just finally, as we start to wrap up this panel, on agentic advertising, do you see it as kind of a very long-term solution to the current pain points that it tries to alleviate, such as interoperability? Maybe you could start. I don't know. It's a big one, isn't it?
I can go. I can go first. I mean, I've got to be frank. I'm really excited about it. I'm so excited about it. I'm really, really hopeful that this whole concept of sort of agent-to-agent communication is going to break down the barriers that the APIs have just not been able to achieve. Obviously, it comes down to companies sort of working together to enable that sort of interoperability. The area that I'm hoping, I'm not saying that I have a solution for this, but the area that I'm really hoping we're going to start to see this thing is this whole concept of like MMM modeling, the fact that it takes so long for data to come in, the fact that it's so high level, but the fact that brands are still actually using it as their sort of stance as to where it is they should be sort of placing their marketing activity. So having agents to agents to be able to collaborate to sort of like break down those barriers, I think it's incredibly exciting. But is it a long-term solution? I don't think it's the only solution, but I'm really hopeful it's going to solve quite a lot of problems. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go for it.
No, you go. Okay.
I think, yeah, I also want to piggyback the MMM point because that is incredibly exciting. Brands invest a lot of money in that and get that once or twice a year. So having that influx of information much earlier to be able to act on is super exciting. I also want to stress, though, I'm a little bit more cautious on this one just because we see that if we don't have that agent-to-agent communication, like the accuracy needs to be closely monitored, right? So if we take an example of the ease agentic AI can introduce when it comes to campaign workflow, at every step of, say, campaign planning, campaign setup, optimization, and reporting, we lose accuracy. Take an example that we have 80% at the start of that usage of agentic AI, and then that will go down again if the second agent is at 80%, down to 64, and then all the way to ending up to possibly 40% accuracy. Now that is today, right? So that's a very short-term view. I think for the long term, it does offer a lot of opportunity around being able to solve fragmentation and hopefully not causing more of it. I would say, and I know the IAB Tech Lab just recently has launched a framework that we're all inputting in. It's really important that we have protocols and frameworks in place to cover things like auditability, explainability, governance, and that then those are widely adopted. Otherwise, we're just going to create more chaos, distract us from our day-to-day jobs and kind of what we want to do for our companies, and derail the industry. So I feel positive that there's, as Alice said, lots of opportunity, and especially as DSPs are currently looking at having more channels that are folded in, it's super exciting. But we really need to collaborate on this and have to move together.
Sorry, I very quickly want to add, I agree with what the guys are saying. I think just from a DB point of view, we're in a slightly luckier position where we can see all the different partners across the whole digital ecosystem, so we don't necessarily need to speak to all the other agents. And when we plug in with clients, you know, we're working with clients to pull in like their stock data in stores, right? We're putting in their pricing models because we love media. We all work in media, but I think a major CPG brand said media makes up 20% of the decision of whether someone buys a product, right? It has to actually be on the shelves, first of all, and all this sort of stuff, right? So when you talk about interoperability between the data, actually having agentic AI which can look at all those different data sources which human beings will never be able to do, work out what parts of that data is actually going to impact on a purchase decision or an outcome in the most effective manner. That's really exciting, and shameless plug, that's not long term, that's short term. We're doing that with clients now, so definitely something to look into if you're not doing that right now, because it's driving amazing uplifts basically.
Great. And thank you all so much. It's such a juicy topic that it was impossible to keep to time. We have had a couple of questions, which I don't think we're going to be able to get without derailing the next panel. But I think possibly we might be able to put some, type in an answer or try and get back to you. And just want to say thank you all so much for listening and joining in the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, Chloe. And thank you to all of the panelists. Really interesting topic. So you heard it here. Artificial intelligence isn't new. We've been, it's fundamental to the programmatic ecosystem, but I think we're referencing agentic and generative AI. Just on the topic of transparency, here at IAS we have a product called Total Visibility, which enables that supply path transparency across all of the DSPs that we were just talking about at the impression level. Absolutely, you need to question those black boxes. So on the subject of transparency and perhaps quality path optimization, we're now on to another incredible lineup. This panel is going to examine how the industry is working to shine a light on the supply chain, from log level clarity and auction mechanics to signal integrity and fee transparency. So please join me in welcoming Benjamin Lanfrey, who's the Chief Client and Partnerships Officer at Ogre, who's going to be managing or moderating this discussion. And again, quick reminder, please continue to keep those questions flowing in the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to them at the end of the session. Over to you, Benjamin.
Great. Thanks a lot, Nick, and very excited to be here today with the heavy responsibility to close this virtual programmatic day with an exciting panel. So welcome also to you, Mark and Sotiris, and thanks for joining me today. So as Nick mentioned, the panel is really around the topic of what this means, building trust and transparency across programmatic channel. So really the idea is to discuss how the industry is working and what initiatives have been done to increase transparency in the programmatic supply chain. And the idea is to cover some of the topics when it comes to auction mechanism, log level data clarity, and what are some of the challenges towards signal integrity and fee transparency. So before we kick off for the first question, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Mark, and then Sotiris?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Benjamin. Happy to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Mark. I'm head of buy development at Index Exchange. Been here for nearly 10 years now, focused pretty much on the buy side, holding companies and building those relationships. For those who don't know, Index Exchange is a global SSP. And I'll pass over to Sotiris.
Hi everyone, glad to be among you. I'm Sotiris Konomou. I run Markup as a managing director over the last few years. We have a global presence and our focus is to expand more in Europe. And we try to bring the global trends in the European markets, especially from overseas. We specialize in a contextual model. We have our own contextual marketplace and we have a big focus in mobile app and Connect TV. And all these topics that we'll discuss today about transparency and trust are like key elements on how the ad tech industry will grow in Europe. And I'm really excited to be among you.
Thanks a lot for those intros. So to kick this off, I would really like to start by unpacking the term itself and what we mean by transparency, because usually it means completely different concept. In some cases, we're talking about transparency in terms of fees. In other cases, it's around supply transparency. And obviously, it means different things whenever we are talking for buyers, sellers, and intermediaries. So what I would like to understand with you, Sotiris, to start is what do you mean? What do we mean by this, and why does it matter in order to improve the trust and accountability in the supply chain?
Of course, in every business, transparency and trust is a key element to build and grow and expand on that. I mean, definitely it's a matter of perspective. It's how you look at it. Either you're on the demand or the supply side. It's not only the supply chain. It's not only the supply path optimization. I mean, you have the publisher, you have the SDK, you have the reseller. Most of the buyers want to see that they buy the actual price, but it's not always like this. You need to see that you buy actually a user, a product, an impression that fits your needs. And so the publisher needs to educate, needs to develop, needs to invest in his technology and his offering in order to be able to provide back the contextual data, the signals, the metrics, and all the values and parameters that the buyer needs to see. Because the buyer cannot invest money in something that they don't see and they don't trust in the end, how they can validate what they see. So it's that's how you build trust on that, on the supply path, everything. It's something that needs to be developed a lot. And on top of that, later on, with all the data you analyze, you build a higher trust. So then partners can come to you and keep spending more and more.
Okay, thanks. This makes sense. From your perspective, Mark, when we talk about transparency, what do we mean in terms of what information are we talking about and what should be available from your perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, transparency is spoken about so often, and I think it's just a word people use sometimes. But to be completely honest, I think it depends on where you sit in the ecosystem. So you mentioned a few things there, Benjamin, at the beginning. Fee transparency, that's been huge for SSPs over the last few years. Supply path optimization has led to like understanding who's selling the inventory, signals that are coming through the bid stream. So, are we sending the right signals? Are they transparent to both sides of the industry? Even ad quality, MFA, IVT, brand safety, these things all kind of sit in the same bucket of like transparency and people understanding what they're buying. And then from the publisher side also, like how is their supply being presented? How are they being presented to market? Is their data being leaked? These things from a publisher point of view, they would determine as transparency in the market. I think like the truth is programmatic is fragmented, right? I mean, we're not search, we're not social. Those areas they're closed. So sometimes they can get away with a bit less scrutiny than we can in programmatic. We are very fragmented. There is a lot. It's not as straightforward as buying search or social. So for that reason, I think to your question of what information should be available, as much as possible. I think depending on what the buyers, I work the buy side, so a lot of my talk today would be from the buy side point of view. Depending on what they're looking for, some brands want full transparency on how much money is going where, right? Great, we should provide that. Others want an outcome, and so they're less interested in where the fees are going. Are they getting the end outcome? Great, what is needed to get that outcome? Normally that is certain signals, certain information in the bid stream. So from my point of view, from Index's point of view, I think we need to be as transparent as the market needs to grow as a programmatic ecosystem. And due to the fact we are so fragmented, I think that is that is offering as much as we possibly can across all those areas that I just mentioned at the beginning.
And since, I mean, on that topic, if we look at the evolution of different initiatives that have been done in the recent years, I mean, do you think this has been taking like a positive direction? And what do you think are the main challenges today to be able to go to the next stage of transparency?
I mean, we've come a long way. I think people forget where we've come from, right? I mean, at the beginning, we weren't even seeing URLs in the bid stream. Publishers were sending inventory without even buyers knowing which URLs they're buying from. That was at the start of programmatic when, it was seen as kind of a remnant play from publishers. Since then, we now see full URLs. We have ads.txt, we have app ads.txt, we have sellers.json. We now move to a first price auction so that certain partners can't take margin out of second price auctions. So we've come a very long way, and there's numerous other things we could mention in the market that have happened to transform us from where we started. But there's always challenges. I think a couple of challenges to call out. I think we've aligned a lot on like what signals should be sent through the industry. The IAB's done a very good job. OpenRTP has been fantastic for that, and we're pretty aligned on what signals and information to send through a bid request. But how do we know if those signals are actually being sent correctly? That's a big challenge we see today. If a buyer is looking at buying video and they want in-stream, they target in-stream, but that's relying on the right information being sent through to the DSP. So that's obviously a challenge that we need to work on. And then just to call out, I guess, CTV specifically, or in-app CTV, there's additional challenges that we now need to face. And this will happen as more things come to programmatic. But in CTV, there's additional things that we've not had in display, right? You've got the idea of the content creator selling their inventory, but then potentially OEMs selling part of the inventory, etc. There's SSAIs in CTV that we don't have in display, and that's where a lot of like the fraud sits. So there are continual challenges in new areas, but I think if we look at where we've come and where we've got to, the path is great, and the idea really is that we continue facing these challenges in the right way and in the most transparent and trusting way, because we all want the same thing. The more that the buy side trust programmatic, the more revenue we will see move to programmatic pipes.
Yes, that's fair. Would you agree, Sotiris, on the positive evolution we have seen across the years and on the most, on the biggest challenge that we are still facing today?
Yeah, Mark had some great and valid points on that. I agree completely with him. The last 5 years are like on an amazing growth. You can see how all the programmatic ecosystem is changing, all the parameters, all the criteria. Yeah, IAB does a great job with all the task forces and the initiatives they take. Even now with the AI and how the standardization is going to be placed with the alliance there, it's amazing how we manage to proceed. The last years, I think that the landscape and the industry cleaned a lot, and all the new standardization models that got in place helped a lot the industry to evolve the transparency and the trust, to build trust between all the people that are involved in our industry and help to grow further. You see how the IVT vendors expanding their area of business, how they developed. We see that the supply chain, which is like the main thing that we see are like a big change in the industry with also the IAB, and now we can be able to see where is each bit goes, and there's still much more room to go, because at the moment we are not fully agnostic. We don't have the interoperability that we can have in a few years, which I personally believe that AI will help us a lot on that, and the new tools that will be developed and the new solutions will come along with the SPO development, along with the full visibility on the SDK fragmentation that we currently have, especially in the mobile app environment, and all the data clean rooms that will be also enhancing their capabilities. I think that the future is really promising, and indeed we did like a great growth the last years, but we need to push even more right now.
Yeah, I think personally, I believe that one topic which is not usually linked to transparency, but which will be a good area where we should make progress as an industry, is when it comes to auction duplication and the fact that you can find, since the early days of header bidding, you can find like I would say the same auction for the same user and for the same placement available X times for a given DSP. I think for me that's still a challenge for transparency. But outside of this topic, I would like Mark to hear your view on the topic of log level data. I think probably since the first time it came up probably like 10 years ago when it was introduced, it was presented as a kind of holy grail to be able, for at least for the buy side and publishers, to be able to access to the full level of transparency. Do you see relatively widespread usage across the board, and do you believe this is actually solving some of the transparency issues within the supply chain?
I like this topic because Index has been offering log level data for free for years, and which is great. So to your first point, it is easily accessible depending on the partner that the buyers are working with. For a long time, the question was, we want to prove how much money everyone is making using log level data. Now, that's great and can be used for that, but it's quite a basic use case for quite an intense amount of work. Like most log level data requires some kind of data science team, a team that can ingest it, understand it, and then utilize that type of data. And to be completely honest with you, we've been able to prove fee transparency without the requirement of having log level data. If you work with the right partners, and you have a direct route to the supply side, it's pretty easy actually to work out how much money is going where. And we've done that numerous times with many of the holdcos. So to your second point about how much it's been embraced, but for that reason, it wasn't really, to be honest with you. It was in a lot of RFIs. It was in a lot of emails asking for that type of information. And the second we said yes, it's available and it's for free, that was kind of the end of the conversation. It was kind of like a tick box to say, oh, it is available. If we needed it, we could have it. However, the last couple of years, I think, are where especially sophisticated buyers, and you're starting to see the kind of custom algorithm partners now, are starting to realize that they can use this information for much more than just fee transparency. And a lot of that sits in the optimization and driving towards outcomes. The thing about being an SSP, we see so much information. We don't cap supply like DSPs, right? So we see everything a publisher has. We see all the signals that are coming through. Not all of that is sent through to the DSP. Not all the signals are sent through. Not all the supply is sent through. And so there is so much power in activating or at least understanding what information is available from the supply side. And as I mentioned, there are certain buyers now who are starting to ingest that and utilize it when it comes to them building out models towards certain outcomes or whatever it is they're looking to do. With that comes natural transparency. We're sending signal direct from source. They are as close to the impression as they possibly can be. And the final thing I'll say is fundamentally, if a buyer wants to see their own data, especially on impressions they've won, they should have the right to do so. If they are struggling and they have friction with a partner that is not providing that level of information, there probably should be a question as to why that is. Because at the end of the day, it is their information, it is their data to use.
Yep, makes sense. So Thierry, any second thoughts on this topic, or is not really something that Markup is directly involved into?
We have experience in long-level data. It's not something that we utilize on a heavy model at the moment. I have to say that the first time I went into such discussion about log-level data and to get them, when I learned about the cost, I freaked out. We are not like a big public company or like a big company in Europe. As an SME, we have to pay lots of money and our activity is not as big. So having companies and organizations like Index going out there giving this low-level data for free is really beneficial for the partners, especially for companies that want to grow and want to invest on that. Because it doesn't matter only to get them, you need also to invest a lot in order to be able to understand the value of this data. So when you have this kind of data, you can definitely go out and find exactly what's going around you. This later on can help you build the trust and transparency that we discussed above. So it's like a key element on further scaling this kind of operation. Long-term level data should be available, should not be something that's like limited to the transparency, especially on either the demand or the supply side. And this is at the moment have like a key role on how they can distribute them. So I think that this kind of operation on investment of every company on the log-level data will help a lot for lots of SMEs out there.
Yeah, on that topic, I mean, we were discussing in the previous panel around AI. I strongly believe that one of the historical barrier to be, let's say, democratizing the usage across non-expert, let's say, team was, can be, let's say, removed with AI usage. I mean, we typically see some of the larger analytics companies thinking about Snowflake or even others that are creating capabilities for, let's say, non-technical users to be leveraging data that was only usable by data scientists a while ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Now, I just want to move to another topic, which is back to transparency. We've seen in the recent years that sometimes there's, keeping specific information not available for the other side. So whether this is publisher data, I'm just giving the example of floor price, not completely available for the buy side, or even buy side, not providing always full transparency on the supply side. This is sometimes linked to some specific commercial interest of each side of the business. So just wanted to ask you, what's your point of view on this obstacle, which is kind of how can we overcome commercial interest, and can this be justified in the current ecosystem? So Thierry, do you want to start?
Yes, of course. And this is a really nice and interesting topic. Definitely, there's a lot of noise around it in our industry. So from my point of view, in our industry, as every other industry, we need to go and size what's available out there and what are the needs. The demand side has some needs in order to cover the KPIs. The publisher side has some needs in order to cover their healthy operational criteria. So if the buyer makes like $1, $2, or $3 margin, why to be such a noise when the supplier also cover their needs? We are always talking about moving on ethical ways and barriers. I mean, if you go and take like 200% margin, okay, no. I mean, everyone needs to be healthy and happy in the end of the day. We are all here to make money and go home and fulfill our fridge for our families. That's why we are here. But when you go and somehow harm the activity of the other, definitely yes, the pricing model needs to be discussed and needs to be evaluated. On that level, on the pricing especially, because we're talking about organizations, there needs to be like a development on the law possibly, to be able to size the capabilities of the margin and the price. So here we can see that if old methods like the transaction ID or what ADCP now is trying to establish with everything be aligned with the agents, then all this can help to see the prices and somehow limit what can each make as a margin.
Mark, do you agree with those statements?
Yeah, I think so. I think every company has a right to be as transparent as they like. They each have their own models in the market, and they have a right to be fully transparent or non-transparent. I think the key, I mentioned it earlier on, we work in. Are you still there?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, my computer
hear
just
you.
shut off. Yeah, so with being in an industry like this, I think the problem you've got is if we are harming programmatic as a whole, then I think that that's obviously a discussion that the industry needs to have. But there are going to be pockets of partners who provide value without providing full transparency, and as long as they're providing outcomes to the buy side, for example, then they have every right to do so. I think where the problem comes is where information is being restricted and we're harming programmatic as a whole. Less money is coming to programmatic because there's less trust. And to be completely honest, you speak to most brands directly, apart from any programmatic specialists, they understand search, they understand social, they still struggle to understand programmatic. And because of that, I think that those are the reasons we need to keep pushing the agenda. You mentioned transaction ID. I think in general, most people align with the idea of transaction ID. I think it's a good initiative. I think it was pulled at one point from publishers because they didn't understand how it was going to impact the value of their supply. But in general, if you speak to most of them, they are happy with the idea of growing the programmatic pie. And so from that standpoint, I think we're all kind of working in the same boat here. We all want to push the transparency agenda because we want more money moving towards programmatic.
Thanks. I agree. Do you think about specific, what's the next barrier that we should potentially accomplish as an industry? I mean, you mentioned, I think, efficiency, trust across the ecosystem. Do you think there is like a non-initiative or even a new type of initiative we need to potentially go through collectively to be able to, to take trust to the next level?
I personally, I actually think that we're going to be, I'm not going to say forced to move into that realm, but I think as AI starts to make more decisions in buying, that's going to require better information, more transparent information to be able to drive the outcomes that brands need. So the money is automatically going to flow to areas where we are providing that level of transparency. So I actually think we're going to automatically move more into that space. We already are working in that way. We mentioned a few initiatives earlier on. The industry as a whole is behind the idea of transparency and trust and building programmatic. I think that the next stage will be as we automate a lot of things, and that's already starting to happen. But as we automate more and more, and AI and algo partners are starting to get more involved in the industry, we need to feed the AI with information that is correct and transparent. And so therefore, I think naturally we will see partners start to abide by that because they're going to see more revenue. At the end of the day, the challenge has always been we want to be more transparent, but we're not seeing more revenue come in. So why should we be more transparent? But I think naturally we're going to see the more transparency, the more revenue that these partners receive.
Makes sense. Thanks, Mark. So Thierry, any further thoughts on this topic regarding next steps for the industry and how we can improve this collectively?
Definitely AI is a big thing out here. We need to source it with transparency, as Mark said. All the data we need to place are accurate, and this will will help it like evolve it by itself a lot, and we see lots of scale in the industry. That though comes with a lot of other things in parallel. What I want to say is that we will work with full transparency on an AI model and agents that will keep on building their own reports, their own tactics, their own methodology, their own systems, and everything. And then we have IDCP. So all the agents will work aligned on that, and there will be full transparency. But what about the barriers of how fast it will be? How big would you need to have the investments? What will be the outcomes of that? Will you lose like a force power? Will the companies needs to scale the fees to be able to make such investments? There are many other outcomes that come. Slow and steady, I believe that it will come to a really positive outcome, and eventually we will have what we need to do. And also in parallel with all the protocols and the frameworks and the IVT vendors out there, we will see an industry that rapidly changes to a fast and really insanely good policy in the next few years.
Great, thank you. So we do have time for one question that came up, unless Nick, you want to take over because we're running out of time.
I think we've got time for a question, definitely.
Yeah, so we do have one question specific to the in-app environment, where, I mean, I would actually ask you the question. I mean, the question is whether there are dependencies linked to the SDKs that make transparency harder to achieve. So I personally disagree with the statement that SDK is making transparency harder to achieve. But so Thierry, since you have, it's experience and activity on the in-app ecosystem, is there, I would say, a stance you have on this one?
Yes, I mean it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard when you have different SDKs in the bitstream and in the operation, because you have the developer, you have the mediation, you have the SDK, and then you send the request to the SSP or to the DSP or any other demand part that you have. But I think that because it's an SDK doesn't mean that everyone works the same. Other SDKs report differently the placements, other SDKs report differently the impressions. There are lots of not only reporting differentiations, but also structure in the core of the SDK difference between them. So it's hard to align. It's not that the data are interoperable there. So, and also it's not agnostic. So you have lots of issues. I believe that in the future, this might also be able to be resolved as an issue. It's something that with AI and a fast track and reporting, you can transfer the data easier. But we will see.
So yeah, I definitely agree that the SDK itself, because of its nature, is creating some complexity in terms of implementation, in terms of monitoring, etc. However, I do believe this is actually super transparent because it's kind of where you have one of the most direct access to supply without intermediaries. You are also able to get a lot of signals, specifically in terms of the rendering, that you don't have when you are server side. So for me, I would say that indeed it's creating some challenges in terms of implementation and monitoring, but I do believe that there is actually more transparency involved when it comes to direct SDK. But Mark, do you have any view on that to close this?
Not so much to add, to be honest, in the in-app space. I think I think you guys have covered that pretty well.
Great. So we are running out of time. Thank you guys for this great conversation. And yeah, over to you, Nick.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Benjamin, and thank you very much to the rest of your panelists. We're now drawing near to the end of second half virtual programmatic day 2020-25, and what an incredible series of conversations we've just had. We've covered a vast range of topics and shared some really, I hope you agree, invaluable insights with many of you tuning in today, and a huge thank you to all of you for being a part of this. I want to make a special thanks to our speakers for their time, expertise, and the invaluable perspectives that they've brought to today's discussions. And I'm confident everyone here is walking away with some fresh ideas, maybe some different opinions, and some actionable insights to elevate or bring back into your own businesses. So finally, today's event is being recorded and will be available on IAB Europe's website in the coming days. So please keep an eye out for that. And don't forget, IAB Europe offers a wealth of programmatic resources, from white papers and guides to 101 videos. So be sure to explore the Knowledge Hub on IAB Europe, all one word, .eu for more. So we have 2 more events coming up before we break for a well-earned Christmas. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock CE time, we stand with Central Eastern time. Be sure to join our MIXX Awards Europe virtual ceremony, with the shortlist already announced on our website, or IAB Europe's website. This is a chance to be the first to hear about this year's winners. And we'll close the year with a State of the Nation webinar with Dr. Daniel Knapp on December the 11th. So that's definitely one you don't want to miss. And finally, a massive thank you to all of you, our attendees, for tuning in. Without your support and interest, we wouldn't have such a great virtual programmatic day experience. So my name's Nick. Thank you again for everyone for joining us. Here's to the future of programmatic.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers all.